Right, okay guys, so we're on to the sill. I want to get that done now. So I've got the car up on jack stands. I've got it level based on the measurement I take there. It seems to change when you go towards the back of the sill, probably because it's all it's not very strong, that sill, anymore. Both the inner and the outer sill have disintegrated pretty much once you start looking around in there. So yeah, so the car's up on jack stands. That's obviously the inner sill continuing up to the back of the splash guard and the wheel well. So there's a load of spot wells in there, I think, that I've got to try and get at. So obviously the tyre's going to come off, the wheel's going to come off. Yeah. So at the moment, what I'm trying to do is I'm removing the striker plates for the doors, and then I want to effectively get the doors lined up as I want them, so that I can then brace across the door openings and also brace this post to that post, just having a brace straight across, and that should lock everything in place so that once I start cutting away the sill, I don't start sagging problems with getting everything out of shape, so that when I weld the new sill in, obviously then everything will still be out of shape. So that's the plan. But yeah, a bit of work to do yet, because these doors are nowhere near lining up. I'm not quite sure whether I need to perhaps once I've got it up on the stands, it's made a bit of difference, I don't know. But as you can see here, we've got an enormous gap. You know, it goes from sort of less than a finger to very much more than a finger. Now at the moment the door's not closed, obviously when it closes it will close up a bit, but yeah, it is hanging very oddly at the moment. So I'm going to focus on getting the two doors best I can, and without shims to start with, and then I've got some shims to shim out the hinges if needs be. And obviously you can also manipulate the hinges here. You can actually bend them a little bit to maybe tweak things. So I'm going to try and do it without using shims to start with, and then if I need to, I'll break out the shims. So that's where we are at the minute. So back door is looking a lot better. So what I did, first of all, the most sort of obvious thing here is that where the bottom of the D post meets the sill, I would say that has definitely lifted it a bit. So I mean, it's supposed to be blended in, and whoever did it last time just bodged it in there, so I'm going to do a better job of that when I fit it. But however, when I jack the back of the car up, so at the moment I'm sitting on stands on the subframe, and when I jack the back of the car up here, slightly lifting it clear of this jack stand, then the door lifted, or should I say, because we know this sill is shot to bits, that the actual body tub lifted up a little bit, and just enough, a few millimetres, but it was enough to help lift that a bit. Now then, what I did was I addressed it was still kind of catching on the bottom here. You can see the mark there where the bottom of the door here was catching. So what I then did was work on the top hinge. So because I didn't want to shim out the bottom hinge, I wanted to bring the door forward a bit. I took the hinge off and I basically gave it a bit of a pounding. I haven't got enough light really. Where are we? Sorry, let's try that again. So I took this hinge off completely and then flattened it out a bit, because they have a natural slight curve here. They curve out that way slightly. By flattening it out a bit, it actually pulls the door in that way towards the front of the car. So did that. Also removed a couple of shims here which hold the front of this frame up. By removing those two shims, the front of the frame drops a few mil. When you combine the whole thing together, what you've now got is the door is perfect. It's not hitting the bodywork, it's just hitting the rubber. So that's just the door rubbers. Yeah, so once the striker plate is back on, in fact I think I'm going to do that. I'll put the striker plate back on just to show you. It should be a nice solid thunk with no lifting or doing any weird shit. The hinge here obviously has been bent forward, so that's pulled the door forwards, and with the door closed we've got a nice fairly steady sort of 1/8 of an inch gap up and down there. So I don't think it gets much better than that. Obviously, once you've got the metal trim on, that should even close up further. There you go. So that should even close up further. So that's better. There is still a little bit more adjustment here on the window frame. What I can also do is I can actually lift the back of the frame up a little bit by loosening off those 2 bolts there, and there's a couple under here as well. And then the frame, you can just see here where my finger is there, sits on a load of shitting on shims. So I could shim that up another millimetre, maybe 2, and that would just pop the back of the window frame up. And what I think that will do will give me an almost perfect straight gap there, because at the moment I would say I'm about 2 mil out from the top to the bottom, maybe a bit less. Once I get the striker plate on, we'll have another look. So I'll do that now quickly. I've got the striker plate back on, and yeah, it's nice close. No effort, closes properly. It's nicely firm against the car, it's not loose. We've got a nice up there, that's nice and even. Like I said, still got a slight large gap at the top, but I think I can shim that out by lifting the back of the frame up a tad. This looks a little high, but actually when you look down the side of the car, the profile of the top of the door doesn't exactly match the bodywork at the back here, so it's not perfect, which makes me think it was another door skin put on there at some point, but it's good enough, I think. Otherwise it's about maybe trying to bring that in a bit further, which may be possible. I could loosen off the striker plate and try that. I'll give it another go, hang on. There you go. So I tapped the striker plate in a bit further, and that's brought the door in just another mil or 2. I'm really happy with that. That's as good as I'm going to get it today. I'm not going to worry about getting this gap closed because I know I can do it. I'll worry about that because I've got to strip the doors and everything. It's something to do at the end. The main thing is to get the door fitted. I don't need shims, so the good news is I know I can get it right, and I know that if we brace these doorways on the back now, that will be okay. Now the front door is going to be a whole nother kettle of fish, I think, so I'm going to get that on in a minute. I'm going to leave the back door on as a sort of an idea of what the line is, and see if I can get things looking good on that front. Okay. Right, there you go. That closes without any change in height. It's not riding on the catch. It's just going in. I actually pulled the seal off the door because that's what was pushing out the bottom of the door. The seal was all misformed, so I have removed it. Yeah, so that's a lot better. And I think I can actually slightly push the bottom of this door back in again, which would be nice because it'll seal better. So that's basically now, this gap here is better, but it's still wider at the bottom at the top by a good couple of millimetres. So I think what I'm going to do there is, everything else is looking good. You've got a nice gap there, not bad there. The window frame is looking good. So, the only thing that doesn't look right is that gap at the bottom. So I think the best thing to do there is I'm going to weld some wire on the back of on the trailing edge of the door skin, because I think it's where the door's been reskinned, or it's a different door, I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to weld some wire on this. I've seen it on YouTube. I'm going to give it a go. Bit of coat hanger wire, weld it down the door, build up that trailing edge by about 3 or 4 mil, and then just sort of tidy it up. So a bit of a cheat, but hey, if it works, it works. So that's where I am really. I'm going to go and get this wing tomorrow and hang that, and the rear one, and just check everything lines up. They're in my unit, my storage box, so I've got to go and get those out of the box, bring them back down here, and I can try them on and just double check before I take everything off and weld up the bracing to brace everything because yeah, there's definitely some sogginess in that sill, and it's not really supporting very much. Amazing the car hasn't folded in half, frankly. So there you go. So more to follow. Okay guys, a little bit of an update. So I spent a load of time that's not what getting the doors as good as possible. I put the wings back on to check, and yeah, it's all okay. I've got slight issues down this front here. It's a bit tight to the wing, but I can move the wing forward a bit and that opens it up. And then possibly need to do a little bit of work on it, because I just don't think this door skin was original, so it was probably fitted afterwards. So now I've done that, I've also done the Mad Max sort of strengthening bit, so I've got all of the bars in place, so it's welded from here to here to here to there, and then across here, to the point now where I can lower this jack and this door stays lined up. There's a very imperceptible amount of movement, but it's tiny, but it stays lined up and closes without touching anything. So yeah, so the doors are now going to come off, and then it's time to start working out how to remove this sill. Just realised one thing though. I haven't welded to the inner sill there, but that's going to be a bit tight to get out. Fucking thing. Didn't think about that, did I? Might have to undo this one here, which is going to be a ball ache, and just slightly reposition it higher up to get it away from that middle sill there, or maybe just cut it there and then just do a piece out to there. One way or another, I'll do it. Anyway, there you go. Okay, just a bit of an update. So I made a start on the sill. I've just cut out the front section of the outer sill to start with, and as you can see, it was well overdue for replacement. So yeah, that's the middle panel there, and then obviously you've got the inner sill or rocker, which is there. All of that's going to be replaced, because you can see the inner's as bad as the outer. In fact, there's nothing left of it really there. It gets a bit better towards the back in places, but it's just not worth the hassle of worrying about whether I'm going to replace it. I have to do it again in the future. Also, one of the things I noticed was, it's quite difficult to demonstrate this, but if you look at this here, this is original. You can see that's actually leading in there. That's probably from the factory. Well, it would have been from the factory. I doubt anyone else did leading on this. And this should be at the same height as that in the sill, but it's difficult to see, but it's about 5-6 mil below it. So actually what's happened is previously the outer sill was at a slight angle going up to where it joins the inner sill, and the middle sill should be all flat. So the A-post is right, and measurements match and are right. So my only conclusion is also, I've noticed here when I was cutting out the old floor, that the floor pan where it joins the inner sill on this side was about 5 mil deeper, as in it was like the floor had sunk. But actually what it is, now I look at this, is I think when this sill was installed, because it was replaced in the 90s, I think what they did was they didn't set the height of the sill correctly, and I think it's probably a bit high at the front. Anyway, it's something that can be tweaked, but you know, question is was it maybe even like that from the factory? I don't know how good the tolerances were, to be honest, but I can tweak it, so you know, it won't make any difference to the fit of the door. All it will do is potentially just drop the front of the sill down a few millimeters, and actually when I opened the door, I do remember it was catching a bit on the top of the sill even when it was positioned right on the A-post, so that would actually add up. So there you go, something to get my teeth into. Next I'm going to continue removing the outer sill. I'm basically chopping the outer sill here and going to chop across there and leave this in place, rather than try and disconnect it from the sill, because this part of the sill, the top part of the sill's fine. In fact, if you look at it, this is the bit I cut out. You know, if you look at the top, there's no rust at all. It's all in the bottom where the water was sitting, and the salt and all the shit that we get on our roads in the UK. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut here, then cut across there, leave that in place, as part of the bottom of the A-post. This was what Scott from Cold War Motors did on his, and I think it's a great idea because you can sort of maintain this nice smooth kind of blending of the bottom of the A-post into the top of the sill, and it's an easier way to do it. And so I'll just cut the new sill to fit around that, and then just butt weld that into place on the old top of the old outer sill. So that's where I'm at the minute, and this bit I'm not looking forward to. This is going to get a bit challenging, I think. And again, where the back of the old D-post joins the sill here, I don't like the look of that. I don't know whether that's been done right at all. It shouldn't be standing proud like that, and I don't think that's just rust swelling it up. I just think that perhaps the D-post or the sill, I don't know, something weird's happened there, so I've got to look at that in a bit more detail once I get the sill off. Right, okay, so most of the outer sill's now gone, and I've started drilling out spot welds for the inner sill. So all of these here drilled out all the way back to the end here. There's a few on the inside there. There's another flange in there that I've got to get to somehow. Then we've got a bit of a, and this is where obviously having had a previous repair, it always makes life fun. Trying to figure out what's been done at the back here. I suspect what's happened is another outer sill has been fitted at some point and kind of just sort of shoved in there and welded up, because this isn't right here. This should be lower down, and I think this has just been sort of beaten up to go over the top of the second outer sill, because there's almost like a dent here where it's been sort of kinked there. So there's probably going to be a little bit of remedial work around the bottom. Well, there is going to be a lot of remedial work around the bottom of that. Likewise here, we've got the back of the A-post has been seam welded onto the top of the sill, so I've got to separate that on both sides. And then finally I've got to, this is the middle sill. So the way it works is you've got the inner sill runs along the inside here, and the top flange of the inner sill is spot welded along there to this panel here. Then the outer sill, or sorry, the middle spacer comes the other side of this panel and is spot welded there and goes underneath where the A-post attaches. So really what I'm going to probably end up doing, I think, is cutting away the flange of the A-post, because I'm going to replace most of that part from about there onwards. Certainly is going to be replaced. Cutting the A-post down here, cutting that out, and then I've also got some spot, well, it's probably bodge welded here as well, and then finally through the back side, it would have originally in the factory there would have been loads of spot welds going through the back of the wheel arch into the end of the sill. However, I don't know what I'm going to find underneath that, but not a lot, I don't think. I might just have to cut out, I might cut out that whole end of the sill, just cut that all out and then put a new panel in there anyway, because it's going to need doing. And I think it's going to be the same back. You can see here, just grab a torch. It's been very badly patched up over the years, so I'm just going to cut that out and make up a new panel to go in there when the time is ready for it. So I'm going to carry on trying to free up this inner sill from the rest of the car. A fair way to go yet. Right, so I've got all of it out. It's a fucking horrible job, to be honest, but anyway, so obviously that's the cross member repair that's got to be done. I've got a piece to replace the end of that. It's not too bad, but I might have to go up to the hole or even beyond it, so we'll have a look at that in a bit. Clean up all this area here. Managed to do as little damage as possible to the floor. This was a bit of a surprise because I didn't see this on any previous drawings or anything. I'm not even sure if it's supposed to be there. Connects to the rear spring hanger, but anyway, so that is like a sort of strengthening plate there. This obviously needs a little bit of work here, and the inner wing, I've just hacked it out. It was all patched up anyway, There's a quilt in there, bit of quilting going on, but otherwise, you know, it is what it is. It's just a painful job on any car, but Rover P5 I think is probably one of the worst. Anyway, that's the old stuff out. Now I've got to start cleaning it up and getting everything lined up for the new one, which is currently over there and needs sandblasting because it's an old stock one. So hopefully it'll fit. Anyway, we shall see. Right, okay, so I've done a bit more tweaking just before I start working on replacing these sills, putting the new ones in. So first things first, just double checked everything stayed straight. So I've got the car level, I'm measuring across that point there and 2 points across the front, and it's nice and level, sat on the jack stands. Refit the doors, just double check, and I've still got no catches fitted, and I've got a nice clean straight fit there. This one, when it's shimmed, will sit about there, and actually that gap is fine. It's going to be a little, maybe a mil wider at the bottom, but hey, it's all looking pretty good. Gap's there about right. Potential to push the door back by shimming the hinges if I wanted to, create a slightly larger gap here at the front between the wing and the door because it was a bit tight. I could put the shims in and space it out a couple of mil, which would help close this gap further, but I've obviously got to be careful there that I don't go too far and then can't get the frame right. So anyway, it's all starting to look good, and everything seems to have stayed since I've cut out the sill where it's supposed to, so obviously my bracing's doing the job. So yeah, so there you go, quick update. Hey guys, right, so more of an update. Making sure the car's absolutely level. So we've got the old spirit level there, cock on. I've checked in a couple of different places. It's just quite difficult finding anything really where you can't think that there may be differences, but I'm assuming that, you know, this is a pretty solid piece welded into the car at the factory, so that's good enough for me. And then what that does is give me a datum from which to then look at the inner sill. So I'm dry fitting the inner sill. I haven't finished cutting the end of the cross member there because I'm almost going to fit that once I've got the sill in place, or certainly whilst I've got the sill mocked up, to make sure that I get the right positioning of the end of the cross member where it joins the sill. So that's that. I'm using a spirit level here to check if there is stages along, so it's pretty close. I mean, there's this end slightly, well actually no, very slightly, so just a tiny little tweak on that will bring that level. Then I can check again here. Again, this is slightly over, it just needs to be slightly kicked up at the bottom, which won't take much to do. That brings that in, and then at the far end it's just slightly the other way, so I need to actually bend the far end slightly down, but we're talking fractional millimeters here, and I can correct that as I'm welding it in. And it probably just means that there's a slight twist to the sill because I'm not under any tension with the sill. I made sure that I've got everything clear of it so I can just fit it without any tension on it. So that's where I am at the minute, and after that I've got to take it all off. I'm going to sandblast the sill, then I'm going to epoxy prime it with the 1-to-1 2-part epoxy primer black stuff, which you know is great stuff. I used it on the suspension for the Stag, so I'm going to epoxy prime the inside, leave the welding flanges bare metal, and probably just use a bit of weld through primer on those because that's going to be easier than trying to clean up the epoxy. And then afterwards I'll probably inject copious amounts of Dinitrol into all the cavities anyway. So there you go, so everything's kind of lined up and it is fitting nicely, to be fair. Back end is right. It's got a weld on the jacking point. So what I found is the Wadham's jacking points are slightly different to the original. So the original had the original rear jacking point is welded, goes right back to this cross, the actual sort of chassis rail, as it were, that supports the suspension on that side. The Wadhams ones are effectively exactly the same as the front. So what you're doing is you're using a front right hand jacking point for a rear left hand jacking point, so they're identical. So that will just effectively fit over that and weld in place onto the sill. I can then brace that to the rail if I choose to. However, I very much doubt I'll be using the jacking points to jack the car anyway, because I mean, I don't even have a jack which fits in there, so I'd probably always just jack underneath a solid part of the structure under the car using a trolley jack. So yes, there you go, that's where I'm up to. Right, okay, so a little bit more here. So I'm pretty happy with the fit of the sill. What I've done is I've now welded on or tacked the bracket onto the end of the cross member here. I clamped the bracket to the back of the sill and then effectively gave it a good strong tack either side, and I can finish that off with the sill off the car. So I know that now that's a good reference point. You know, that's nice and flat against the sill, ready to be spot welded on when the time is ready. So when the time is right, so that's fine. Then what I've done is effectively now you've got the flat plate there that goes behind the sill. That's a good reference point that's braced to the shackle, spring shackle. I don't think it's on all the cars, it's definitely on the coupe. So there's a sort of rectangular plate that goes there and then goes up here that you spot weld the sill to. It's quite a strong area. So what I've done there is I've just put a cleco in through that. I've put 2 clecos in here, just more for referencing when I refit the sill. And then finally a cleco at the front there, just to position that. So I've now got it as I want it. Now I've got to remove it and get rid of the rust and just give it a sandblast and then treat it with some epoxy before putting it all back on again and starting to think about welding it in. So that's the next stage. So yeah, happy with that. I'm not having to force the sill in. It sits in there without sort of flex, having to twist it or push it. And the main thing is being able to use the old spirit level. I now know that when it's fitted with the car level that I'm at exactly middle bubble, so 90 degrees to the floor or to the car as the car sits level, and then it goes back a little bit there, but it continues there, so it's all the way through to the end. Here we've just got a slight sort of, it's not that the sill's under load, it's just a little twist, maybe a couple of mil, virtually nothing, probably nothing to worry about really. But then that returns to normal as it goes back here. I'm back to being bang on all the way through to the other end. So just a slight twist. It's probably in the sill itself, not in the actual panel, not in the way that I've got it fitted up there. But yeah, so that's all good. So yes, getting there slowly. Okay guys, another quick update. So spent a couple of hours just trial fitting stuff. Got both the inner and the sill spacer, the flat plate that goes in between the inner and the outer, in place. That was fine, that all fitted in. So what I'm now doing is I've given them both just an initial coat of epoxy mastic paint, inside and out. So that'll have another coat in about 4 or 5 hours when it's gone off. I've just sloshed a bit of it around in there and also painted the back of these, because obviously once they're joined together they're never going to be able to be got at, so I'm going to give them a coat of epoxy. Obviously I'll have to then clean out the spot weld holes with I've got a spot weld drill to get me back to bare metal, so that I can then just put the spot welds in place. So the plan is that once that has gone off, I'm going to give another coat. Once that's all dried and had a couple of coats, I'm then going to fit this inner sill and the outer and the middle spacer sill. into place and tack them in with a few spot welds and get them in place before I go full bore welding them in. I'm then going to focus on the outer, making sure that fits nicely around there and everything's fine in case I have any problems. But the reality is that sills, the inner sill fits well. It's not going to go anywhere else. It can only go where it is. You know, that sets it in place. That sets it in place. It's up against all the spot welds cleanly all the way along. You know, there's no big gaps or anything weird going on, and it's not twisted, and it's level, and it's 90 degrees to the floor or to the car in terms of the position of it. So really I think I can just crack on and weld it all in, but I might just spot it in to start with and get it well located, but then just have a little play with the outer sill before I finally commit. So that's where we are. Quick update. So I'm just about ready to spot weld the sill in, or plug weld. I spent a bit of time epoxy mastic paint inside and outside. I mean, obviously it's got to be touched up and get as I've spot welded. So I've welded the top all the way along, making sure that I was butting up against the flange of that, which it didn't want to do initially because there was a slight sort of bend in the inner sill, but actually welding it to this straightens things out a bit. Yeah, so it's hanging down a bit at the back, but it will push in and push up at the same time. So that'll then go nice and flat. Everything's where it should be. And then as I weld it up, I'm going to be making sure that I keep an eye on the level all the way along and adjust that as I need to go. And make sure I try and get it as close as possible to being exactly level, or 90 degrees to level, as I go along the car. So that's where we are. So yeah, getting there. Okay, so right, the inner sill is welded in, fully welded all the way along, plug welded all the way across the top, which was quite challenging because the floor pan was a bit thin in places, but I got it. It's nice and strong. So that is now, feels like an iron girder and has the strength of one, I suspect. So the next phase will be, first of all, rebuilding the bottom of the A-post, which I'm doing at the moment. So I'm making that in several pieces just to make it simpler because it's quite a complex piece otherwise. So I'm working on that at the moment, and then so this is now the right shape, and it's folded at the bottom where you're going to have a fixing to take the bottom of the wing, and then I'm just going to bring this in here and just tack this in place while it's on the car and then take it off to finish the job off. So that's where I'm at, and then once I've got that piece done, then I'm going to start looking at the outer sill and working out how to get a nice smooth transition onto the outer sill from these pieces. Obviously that needs replacing, bottom bit of that, so got corrosion in that and not much left of it. So yeah, so there you go, that's where I'm at the moment. Okay, so test fitting the sill. It's not bad, it's taken quite a lot of manipulating to get everything lined up. So if I start at the front, I've got a good sort of line here, so the plan is to sort of just butt weld that into place, blend it in, and then that's basically done. So that's looking pretty good. Centerpiece, I've just temporarily tacked that there just because I couldn't really hold it otherwise. I had to jack up the bottom of the sill a bit to get this to meet. Obviously I've used panel screws here just to hold things in place while I do that, and likewise at the back end it's all a bit challenging, but getting closer. I just need to sort of, obviously this is pretty gnarly anyway, so I'm going to remake that, but the main thing I've got to do is try and get that to blend in, and at the moment it just looks like it might be a bit on the high side, but I mean if you look at that, the outer sill is level with the top of that middle sill, so I mean that's kind of where it should be. I think maybe this was a little bit longer at one point and tailed into it there. I've got the back here, you can't really see. Got a light here, have I? No. So there's a piece here where they've cut down there, and that sort of separates and just goes in behind the bottom of the D-post. That's in place, in the right place. That looks to be about the right length. It just sticks out at the end. It's a bit of a weird bit at the end. So yes, kind of looking okay, but really the acid test will be fitting the doors, which I'm going to do tomorrow. Fit the doors and see how they look. I mean, in terms of how it compared to the previous sill, this is roughly in the same position, so I don't, you know, that was standing proud at the front. It had all been done really quite poorly, so I don't think that's a problem. I just think it needs doing more nicely, and maybe I'll end up having to just remake that and sort of feed it in. So yeah, getting there, but lots of clamps and panel screws holding it in place at the moment, but it does seem to be lining up reasonably well. So I'll report back when I've got the doors fitted. Put the doors on. I've actually already taken the front one off. Okay, so quick update. I had the doors back on. I actually took this one off before I remembered I just needed to make a little update. So they both fit pretty well. The gap along the bottom of the sills even enough on the back one. On the front one it tapers out towards the front, but that's not the sill. That door at some point has had a new skin or something, and it hasn't been done particularly well, because you've got a tight gap at the top here and a bigger gap at the bottom there, and likewise it tapers this way, so it's almost like the whole door is tilted forwards, but it's not, because I can get it to get a very good line up on this door here and get a good fit in the aperture of the door. So rather than cock around, I'm either going to look for another door, but most likely I'll refurbish the door I've got, and which is here, and I've marked, need to sort of trim 5mm off the front here, and that will then create an even gap. So that's probably what I'm going to do. Likewise along the bottom, because it needs some work anyway. It's got some rot in the base there, so while I'm at it I might as well just get the door to fit properly. It's definitely not the sill that's the issue, because everything else lines up, and obviously I'm using the original, and this is original points here and here, so yeah, it is fine in that respect. So yes, so that's where we are. I'll get the doors off now and then get the sill off. I've got to sandblast that, or media blast it. I'll paint the inside with some epoxy, and then think about putting it back up again, getting it all back in place, and then welding it in. And then I've just got to finish off the front. Well, I've got to finish off the front there, the back there, which is quite a complex piece, so I've got to sort that out. That inner wheel arch needs a few patches, so so that needs looking at. The other side's the same, and then the other sill I had a look at with my boroscope. I got it on the camera. I mean, it's definitely better than this one was, but it was done at some point and not particularly well, so you know, it doesn't look straight, so and bows in the middle. So I think it's just the outer sill though. The inner sill I don't think has been changed, but who knows. So yeah, I'm hoping I can get away with patching it up, but otherwise I've got to start all this over again. Hi all, right, so a bit more of an update. Before I took the sill off, I've been doing some other things. I just had a look around to see if there's anything else I wanted to do whilst the sill was on. So one of the things I wanted to do was finish off this piece I showed you that I'd started earlier, which goes at the bottom of the inside of the A-post and sweeps down to join the sill and sandwiches in there. So that's now done. The channel that holds the rubber, or the piece that you use to sort of attach the Furflex to, had rotted out at the bottom, so I've just added that onto that. So don't know how if that's how it originally was, but that's how it is now. So that will then slot in there and makes that bottom finished. So that's done. Happy with it. Real fiddly job that, to get that right, because you're trying to get the right angles, and yeah, a bit of a job. So then next, I have also removed, in order to work on it, the piece that was here, and I've remade, or I've repaired it, and then that goes in here. Let me turn some light on there. I've got lights everywhere. That one's flat because I left it on all night. So this piece is effectively goes in there, and you can see where I drilled out the spot welds. They're still there. So the top part of this is there. I've just remade the bottom bit, which had rotted across there. So that then goes in there, and spot welds back in there. And I'll just have to sort of I'm probably just going to sort of butt weld along, sort of seam weld along there, just to put that in place and connect the top of the sill to the bottom of the wheel well. So it's added strength there. I noticed on this sill that I've got, which I'm looking for Dave Green, that actually it has got, only here for some reason, they didn't do it in the middle, they didn't do it at that end, it's got the sort of the indent, so that will make sense. So what I think I need to do, and in fact that reminds me, I've got to do that before I take the sill off. I've cut this to length so it fits within the indent, and I'm just going to rest it there. Obviously I'll be butt welding it, so it'll be a little bit further forward about there, but that then sits, and it'll make it much easier to get it flush with the sill. I think I probably could do with welding on a strip that will actually extend down, because if you look at this, the indent runs along where my finger's going there, and obviously I've got no material to, and I think that would have been spot welded all the way along there, and that's all this part of the strength. On the other side here, where this piece goes in behind, that piece goes in behind the D-post, bottom of the D-post, so it gets welded in there as well. So it's sandwiched effectively, sandwiches the bottom of the D-post. So I'm just going to weld another strip onto the bottom of the D-post that will then be spot welded to the sill when I fit it, and I'll also weld the same piece, will run along the bottom of there, so that all the way along here it will be spot welded to the sill. I think that's important, because I think that's quite important to having the strength at the bottom of that D-post. So I'll probably do that before I take the sill off. Then I'm going to take the sill off, I'm going to media blast it to get all this surface rust off it where it was stored outside, and then I am going to epoxy prime the inside of it. I'm not going to do the outside of it because obviously that's going to be sprayed the car colour, but I will do the inside, and maybe just splash this with a bit of rattle can etch or something to stop it from surface rusting before I have it painted. So that's where we are. More to follow. Okay guys, so where are we? Just got the outer sill welded in place, and I've just been doing a bit of grinding to try and clean things up. I'm pretty happy with this. It seems to have gone quite well. I've managed to get a pretty good line. It's a bit more grinding and finishing to do around here, and it's a bit fiddly to get in there, but you know, I've managed to create the sort of smooth finish there and there, where obviously that's gone into the recess that's pressed into the outer sill, so it's all spot welded, plug welded all the way along the bottom there and there. Just got to do a little bit more finishing off here. I think I'm probably just going to try and maybe slice a little bit of this away and then push it in a bit and just tap it in and then weld along the bottom of that, so I can get a nice clean line along there as well. But yeah, a little bit of filler to clean things up, but it shouldn't be too bad. So that's also spot welded all the way along the bottom as well, all the way along. Just ground those off. So that is now in place, strong. What have I got to do next? So I made this piece, as you know, I think I mentioned it in the last video, when the last update, that has to drop into here. I'm leaving it out for the moment because I want to sort out the inner wing where it joins, and where you have this sort of piece that kind of sweeps round and I'm going to do a little bit of trimming here, but it sweeps around and then finishes off the end of the sill there. So I've just got to do a wee bit of fettling. I've bent a bit of the original wing out of the way. I mean, that's actually a patch, so I don't know whether, I think the best thing is probably I'll just cut a lot of this out and then just make one piece, or certainly maybe in two pieces, to then sort of finish off here, because it basically would have spot welded to the end of the sill in the factory, or that's actually the jacking point. I've got a couple of holes here where some shonky patchwork was done before, so I'm going to undo all of that and redo that properly. I think we're fairly solid around here. There's a couple of little pinholes, so I'm going to do a little bit of tidying up and cutting back and welding in new metal. I don't know if I need to, that's not looking too clever, so yeah, so I've got some work to do around here, but most of this is okay, so I'm not going to be too worried about that. But and above is fine, along here is fine, all of that's good. Yeah, so that's okay. So there's just some sort of cleaning up to do here and around the back of that. Then once that's done, I'm pretty much finished with this side of the car, and then I've got the choice of then, well, not choice, but I've then got to look at the other side of the car. So sort of could almost call it halfway, but I know that there's some stuff across the back I need to look at as well, certainly on that side. This side's not too bad in here, but the other side's a bit rotted out, so and the battery tray's not great, so yeah, lots more to do. And I want to try and get all this under seal off here as well, clean that all up so that I can give it a new coat of epoxy. So I've epoxied this bit here just because I wanted to get it done, because it's all finished here now, except down at the bottom there, but that's all been epoxied. And then obviously, as I actually need to clean off all the jollop around here as well, so I get all that off. I've got a repair to do to that point there on the subframe, but I can probably do that once the subframe's off, because it's going to come off. Still got to finish welding in the floor pan, but I'm going to wait until the subframe's out to do that, just up against the sill, so that's not too bad. And yeah, getting there slowly. Okay, so a little bit further, I've done the finish off this piece that I made just in here. It was blended in nicely to the sill, just welded that in there, so that sort of finishes off the bottom of that. And then you've got the channel for the rubber strip that comes down there to remake the bottom part of that. So that's all in, welded that in, and then, you know, just clean that up, and that's really good. Close up of that. So I've got it nicely blended in. Just got to finish off the front of the sill there, but I need to refit the door and the wing. Just double check how far I need to trim it back, because I think it's going to be quite tight up to the wing there, so I need to trim that back. And then I've just done the panel here to close off the front of the wing, so that's all spot welded onto the end of the sill, and then I butt welded that back in there, so that's now nice and solid. So all of that's good. Just need to give it a coat of epoxy. That's all done. Just needs a bit of epoxy there. And then I've left the plate at the bottom of that blank, because it would have a hole in it normally. And the wing, there's a tag on the wing that goes in there, but what I want to do is fit that once the wing's on. So I'll drill the hole, and what I'm going to do is probably use a riv nut up into there. I know it's not original, but it makes life a hell of a lot easier. So I use a riv nut, and then once I've located where the wing needs to be exactly, because you can make quite a few adjustments here at the bottom on the wing, bring it in, you know, balance it with the door and everything. So that's that. Just to get a bit more close up on this. Again, this one's a bit dusty, but I've managed to blend that in quite nicely there. Blended it in along the bottom there, and then blended it in there, and that's okay. So yeah, happy with that. Just need to do the back piece now, so move on to that. Okay, so I had a slight change of plan here. I was going to make this in a couple of different pieces, but in the end I cut out a cardboard template and basically made a piece that comes all the way down here. It's a bit short there because I want it to join onto the wing, but that's fine. I'm just going to weld in a piece there and a weld piece there, so close that up. But that will then effectively join up to the back of the outer sill here, and then I'll just put a piece off there to sort of finish that off. And yeah, so I'm just going to cut away here. Just, it's a little bit difficult. The metal here is a little on the thin side, but I'm starting to get some good welds in there. Just get it strong enough, and then obviously plug weld into the back of the sill. And then I've got to make up a piece that comes down here and comes out, and then we'll butt weld onto there. And then that flange will then be, I think, plug welded all the way up because it was really badly done before. And then I can move on up and attack the next patch. And there's that one there, which again you can see it's awful. Down here it was just sort of partially welded, partially open, so a really good dirt trap there. Yeah, so not good. So I need to get that out, and then I need to do a bit of work around here. Another patch there, a few little holes there. And I've cut a section out here which was a patch, and I need to just tidy up and recreate the flange on the inside and then patch that back in there. So yeah, quite a few bits to sort out, but not too bad, just fiddly. So yeah, so that's where I'm at. So that'll at least tidy up the end of the sill. Okay, just a quick update. So I made the patch, welded it in, got to grind it all off. It's all sort of butt welded there as well, or sorry, plug welded there, and then it comes round, so it's sort of following the curve, and then ends up here. I've got to trim this off here, but that's all in and welded along the bottom. It's a bit gnarly, but I've just got to grind it. So, and then I've got to make a piece that fills here and goes up there. So that's where I'm at next. Yes, all good fun. Right, so giving that all a clean up. That's going to get a couple of thick coats of epoxy at some point. I've just sort of welded up the end of this, so that's ready just to be shuttered off at the end there, just a flat plate over the end of that, and then grind that back and it'll look as it should. So that's all ready to be welded on here. So the next thing is to effectively make the, some light on the subject, the PAM. I'm going to make a cardboard template to fill this piece down to that foot at the bottom. So that's my current job. Okay, so got this piece roughly tacked in. Going to finish butt welding that all tomorrow, and then start on the next bit. So yeah, that was fiddly, to be honest. I think this is going to be just as bad. Anyway, there you go. Right, hey guys, so I've just spotted something I've forgotten to do. So where are we? My goal this weekend was to finish the car. Finish this side of the car. Fucking hell, finish the car. That's a long way to go yet. So basically the sill's on. I have been doing the wheel arch. That's where I think I left it. There's a bit of tidying up to do here. A couple of little hedgehogs poking out. Let's sort them out. But I basically had to do a bit of a patchwork job all the way up there and all the way up there. It was one of those where once I started it just kept on going. Anyway, it's all done, all welded in, flatted back. Just got to put an end cap on that, but I'm going to fit the door first and just check that. Found a little bit of rot around the back here, so I've put in some new pieces here. Thankfully, I think that's pretty much it. I've just noticed that hole there, which I've just got to fill now. I've just cut a piece to fit in there, and then hopefully I can then say that I'm pretty much done with this side of the car, and I can take out all of this scaffolding and get actually back at the car. On this side, although it looks a bit scabby, it's solid. The other side is not such a good story. Around the back, I suspect the tonneau panel, which is that panel there, underneath there, on the other side, is going to be pretty gnarly. I've already cut a piece out of the boot floor, and you can see there's not much left of anything beneath it. So that's, yeah, that's going to take a little bit of thought. Figure out what goes there, because you can't buy the inner panel, you can only buy the outer panel. So I'll just have to work something out based on what I can see. Then I've got to look at the wheel arch on this side and the sill on this side. So, well, what I want to do is get the car on its wheels, push it out the garage, so I can turn it around and bring it in, work on it from this side, and then start the next side. But I guess I can officially say I'm over the halfway point at this point, because I've done both sides at the front. So I've done this at the front on both sides. The other sill isn't as bad as this one was, but until I get in there, I'm not really going to know. I've just welded that piece back in there. Got to do a bit of cleaning up. I also have a bit of cleaning up to do around here, where I had to do some repairs at the bottom of the metalwork connecting onto there. So that's all done, or just needs cutting back. Yeah, so I think I might use the opportunity of saying this is halfway to download this onto the computer and cobble up an update of the last month's work, or several weeks' work at least. There you go.